Welcome to Montreal Rocks, and today we are in talks with Nick Allbrook of the band Pond. If you don't know the band Pond, I guess you could say that Pond and Tame Impala are twins, but if you had a choice to take one to a party, you're going to pick Pond. Is that pretty correct?
I
You're,
won't say, but that's very kind of you.
you're the more fun of it too, let's put it that way.
That's very nice of you.
I like to start off with a little bit of an origin story to find out, where Nick came from, how he got introduced to music. Uh, you probably have an early memory of flipping through your parents' record collection or their CDs or however they were listening to music. Is there a band or a song that really triggered something in you where music went from something you heard to something you felt?
That's a great way of putting it. Um, there's heaps. There's heaps of times I can remember. I remember when I was living in really young, like might have been about 7 years old or something, living in Derby in the northwest of Australia, a really remote region. Um, I got really into this Australian grunge band called Silverchair.
Oh, yeah.
Um, yeah, and they put out their seminal work Freak Show, and I when my parents went out for a while, I just blasted it so loud. I know, honestly, like 7 years old, and I blasted it so loud and like, for lack of a better word, rocked out until I was like drenched in sweat and lying on the floor, panting. And my sister came in. I couldn't hear her knocking. I opened the door. Like, what's going on? So I feel like that was pretty big. I also have a really cheesy moment that I don't. I'm pretty sure this is how it went down, but maybe it's been like Hollywoodified in my mind. But I remember my dad bought me when he started realizing how into music I was. He bought me uh, a CD of the Who, um, uh, at the video store, and we got in the car and put it on and cranked it up, and I think the first song was like um what is it? I can go anywhere when I choose. When I lose, and it's got that big chord at the beginning.
Yeah.
Blew my mind. I think that was it. Anyway.
It often takes those experiences as a child to unlock like a new path in terms of music, and then we kind of eventually create our own uh personality when it comes to what we like, what we don't like. But sometimes you need that doorway to open up to go explore. And I think
Yeah,
the exploration as a child, I think, is so important because it it probably says a lot about the type of music that you're playing now, having that as a background and having those discoveries so young.
yeah, yeah, probably.
And then along your evolution, you eventually were in a band called Mink Muscle Creek. What did you learn from that experience?
um, Pretty much learnt um, how to play in a band and how to actually play properly. Um, we were terrible. We were terrible when we started, um, and just enjoyed it so much, and did it so often, like living together and doing it every day, playing every single day for fun.
There's a real power to doing something bad because nobody starts off doing anything, walking, brushing your teeth. You don't start off doing great. You start off doing bad and you gradually improve. I think a lot of people stop the exploration of becoming a musician because they want to be great at it right from the start. But I think it needs somebody like you that will go there and just enjoy the process of being bad for a little while until you get good.
Absolutely, never a truer word spoken. It's quite a tender balance as well, because you don't want to. It's very hard as a young person or an old person when you're learning something new, and the first thing you do sounds awful or feels awful. Like you go for a run and you can barely move, you know. So there needs to be some way of feeling. I know the first time I got taught how to play actual, just full basic chords was when I got hooked on guitar, because it's like, oh, that's a song. You know, I know that song. You can play Hey Jude all of a sudden, or like, you know, hundreds of simple songs. But when I first got a guitar for Christmas, like a really sturdy, big steel string acoustic guitar, and a book of Jimi Hendrix tabs, I'd sit there trying to nut out his solos with a steel string acoustic guitar and just be like throwing my hands in the air, wondering why I was so god awful at playing this instrument. And I didn't do it for years after that. I was so disheartened. But you do
But
have to get through it. You got to get through the experience of being bad, and that's what. Because I don't know, like David Lynch talks about it, that is the definition. That literally is what creativity is as a process: is doing something and then correcting something that your deep inner voice says is bad and you don't like and you want to change it.
you have to be a hard yakka. Am I right?
Yeah, I guess so. Hard yakka, that's it.
We don't use that expression here in Canada, but it just means somebody that really gives us his all.
It's more the I think hard yakka is more the process, not a proper noun.
Mhm.
It's like today, how was work today? Oh, it was hard yakka.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
Now I know the context of where to use it in my day to day.
That's right. Yeah, you can throw it around all you like.
I mean, one thing about being in Perth is an interesting place, and Australia in general is fascinating. I've always wanted to visit, but it must be quite a challenge to tour because everybody's like separated by these long distances, and you just see like a little bit of greenery, then like desert, then a little bit of there's an oasis of a city, then the desert, then an oasis of a city. What was it like to tour? You probably have a vivid memory of getting to a gig that in between those oases.
Yeah, well, you got to fly now in Australia if you're going to tour, which is sad. Um, but it's just unfeasible, like economically, to take a whole bunch of people and spend enormous amounts of money on fuel to drive across the Nullarbor, um, because Brisbane, Sydney, Canberra, Melbourne, Tasmania, and Adelaide are all on the east coast, and well, almost Adelaide. It's pretty close over there. And Perth is on the west coast.
Yeah.
So for a Perth band, it's like if you're gonna do anything, you gotta fly. You gotta fly somewhere, which is a pain. But yeah, I do remember vividly playing a first show outside of Perth in Melbourne.
The name Pawn, you said is inspired by crep rock bands that have these one word names back in the day. But
Yeah,
when I think of a pond, I think of a man-made like a small body of water versus like a lake. Are you happy being in a pond? Does that help you where you can really enjoy the music because you're not trying to please a lake full of people, but you're really just doing things for yourself. Is that kind of how you see it?
I think at the beginning I saw it in a very sort of psilocybin-y way, as being ponds being lakes in an ocean, and us being a very small collective of people flowing and interacting with the rest of the human circus, you know. So it was more like we're all in a intermingling body, but we can loosely define ourselves as a pond, even though it's sort of
I
you know
think I also think the putting,
it osmosizes with the rest of
yeah,
society.
I mean it's all the same base, right? Water. But I think sometimes we have to limit ourselves and not try to please everyone. Because when you please everyone, you please no one. So I think by
Okay.
giving ourselves those limits, we can make music that's true to ourselves and who we are as a band. Not that I'm in a band, but you're in a band. Uh, I think that kind of defines who Pond is, because you have an identity, you have a style. It'll change over time, but you seem to be taking more and more control over where you're going with this.
Yeah, that's nice to say.
Specifically, this is the first album that you did without Kevin Parker as a producer. So
Yeah, yeah,
this
yeah,
kind of
yeah,
shows that you're really taking control of your sound and you make it more you.
yeah. Yeah, I suppose so. Um, it's hard to say because we're all so informed by each other. Um, so it can be difficult to sort of delineate where where one ends and the other begins.
Well, maybe I'll say it this way. Here's a quote from Emil Zatopek. So everyone said, Emil, you're a fool. But when I won the European Championship, they said, Emil, you're a genius. So maybe this is that moment for you where you went from, well, I wouldn't say you're a fool, but you went to becoming your own genius by doing things yourself.
That's great. I love that you quoted Zatopek. That's great. Yeah, I mean, I'm happy being a fool as well. I think the fool, um, there's infinite possibility for the fool, you know.
I like that.
But yeah, that. It does feel really good to have, you know, the last album just being a Pond in-house production. Um, but it still sort of felt in-house with Kev doing stuff. Uh,
Mhm.
but yeah, no, it's really nice. It was truly independent.
Here's another quote. This one is from Agnes Martin. So,
Great.
art is the concrete representation of our most subtle feelings. So let's talk about maybe how a pair of slippers inspired this deep philosophical dive that eventually gave us a song, Gold Cup, Plastic Soul.
Yeah. Well, um, I sort of started doing. I got in a really good routine in for a while, which was just writing every day. Before I did any of the other stuff and before anyone else woke up, um, and just sort of loosely directing it towards something that I felt personally affected by. Um, so I started writing about my slippers that I've been wearing for ages. The same brand, the same size, from the same Vietnamese deli in Perth for like 12 years, I reckon. And then one day they just ran out, and and that was it. And it felt quite like profound and moving that this was something that had been, it was the same pair of shoes, but very different pairs of shoes. Just like I'm the same body, but all my cells have been replaced over and over again. And I've been shod in these cheap, these cheap pairs of, like, these terrible slippers that are probably made in an awful factory somewhere. And I guess I just spent a while spitballing and reflecting on like all of the different sort of contrasting elements of what makes these slippers so stupid and crap, but also so like deeply, feel such deep profundity surrounding them, and how they sort of they thinly separate me from a true earthly experience over the last decades by about half a centimeter.
And I think that's true in general. A lot of people, they have a protective bubble around them and they fail to experience things to the fullest, just maybe because they don't want to be embarrassed, or there's some fear, anxiety. And I think when you can take off the slippers and really experience foot on the ground, feel the earth, it's a whole different experience. And it's only, like you said, a thin a, a thin layer that's separating you.
Absolutely. And I think at the time when I was writing that, I was also emotionally, to stretch the analogy further, I think I was emotionally starting to take off the slippers. And I think for a long time I'd kept the sort of thin, sort of plastic shield between me and other people, and not and kept a lot to myself. Um, and then around the time I was writing that, I was actually starting to, push the boat out, open up a little bit and um, start to reveal some things to people who loved me and I loved.
But maybe this brings me to another quote, Ellsworth Kelly.
Yeah.
The negative is just as important as the positive. Do you find that exposing light on the negatives are in our lives takes away its power? And if so, what do you want to shine a light on now?
Does it take away its power? I
You know,
don't
if we
know.
keep the darkness inside, it'll always be there. But as soon as you share it with a loved one, for example, it seems to take away its power, and that's how we get out of these phases.
It is, yeah. Yeah, in my experience, I can't speak for everyone, but in my experience, that is how, that's a savior. That's how you can be saved from 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 the deepest pains and stuff like that, is to expose it. And I've, like, as trite as it sounds, I've felt that with song and with singing about something, um, impossibly hard, and you can almost feel it coming out, and the weight just getting a little bit less. And it's the same thing with sharing it with a loved one, and someone who can really see you and hold it, and reflect what you're feeling and stuff like that.
Then
Um,
the weight of the burden is shared.
yeah, yeah, for sure. What do I want to shine a light on? I don't know. I'm always finding it's always hard. I think after after like Tasmania, I was I think I was kind of worn out from like talking about climate catastrophe because
Bushfires and
it's
all.
so real. It's like actually it's just happening right now. So it sort of didn't feel, it almost didn't feel right or artistic. Um it didn't feel artistic to talk about it. It was just like, yeah, that's what's happening. Yes, it is. There was no sort of poetry to it.
Well, let's talk about that. Uh, Yukio Mishima,
Uh-huh.
I'm saying it right. Another
Yeah.
quote: "True beauty is something that attacks, overpowers, robs, and finally destroys." So, how can we use music, maybe even your own, to accomplish this? To, you basically take a problem, you attack it, you overpower it, you destroy it, and it becomes something beautiful.
Yeah. Well, Yukio Mishima was a very, very disturbed man. Um, he was a brilliant, brilliant person, but yeah, deep. I think like one of those like a genius was truly, truly disturbed, really dark, but absolutely amazing. Um, and obsessed with beauty and power and perfection, which is just almost to the detriment. Like he almost hated himself for not being perfect enough. um, um, but yeah, I totally like using music as a battering ram, like a political social battering ram is something I really, really love and respect. And I almost want to do that, like I just love my favorite bands, like The Clash and Midnight Oil. Um, and yeah, yeah, I think music can do a lot. It can really ignite something. Look at everyone singing Kendrick Lamar at the protests and stuff like that. Powerful.
Exactly. So you're talking about writing. You have a miscellaneous phrase book. What does it take to be included in your miscellaneous phrase book in the early morning writing sessions?
I don't know. Hey, nothing, nothing at all. Um, I wrote something. It's subjective. So yeah, I wrote something about um uh in in Japantown in San Francisco. I was buying a beer, and the guy was like, "I need to see your ID," and I showed him my ID, and he said, "Oh, you're from Australia? I'm from Indonesia." Like the same hood,
Yeah,
and that just touched me. Like I thought, oh my god, that's the energy we need going forward. This guy's got it. Yeah, we are from the same hood. I grew up in northwest Australia. It's like 200 kilometers from Indonesia. And anyway, so I wrote heaps about that.
and that's where yeah, people coming together and seeing the commonalities rather than separating because of looking for differences. Because we can always find differences, but when we look for commonalities, that truly brings people together.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
A few little fun stuff just to wrap this up. I appreciate your time. I'm going to show you your first Instagram post,
Of course.
and I want to see what memories this brings up.
Oh wow.
It says sound checking Frio last night, which, of course, Frio is short for, I don't remember the name of the town. It's
Fremantle.
Freeman. Yeah, I wrote that somewhere. There we go. This was in 2013.
Okay. Yep. Yeah. Okay. Um. Who's that? Oh yeah. So we're mucking around. There's Hando. Hando's our long time roadie and guitar tech and friend. He's playing drums there. So this must have.
December
Oh,
12th.
is that Kev playing bass? I think it's Kev. I'm so confused. What's going on here? So like we used to change around the lineup a lot. A lot. So when was it, did you say? 2013?
2013, yeah.
So we must have just done.
It was December, so end of the year.
Okay, so we'd done like. That was around the period we did South by Southwest. And it actually worked for us. Like the way that people fantasize that it's going to work for them. It actually worked for us. It was bizarre. Like you go, the whole thing is like you'll go there and people will,
Discovery.
people will notice you. The industries everywhere, and maybe even some celebrity will like bloody post about you or something. And basically everything happened for us, and it
That's
was
so cool.
shocking.
So, speaking of, well, this is obviously you're prepping for a show. You're going to be here in Montreal on December 3rd, 2022 at Le Studio TD, which is a nice little venue, a great place to see a show. It's going to be awesome. Just to end up, there's a little game I like to play. It's called the Fantasy Rock Band. Now, I'm not a sports guy at all. Although we have hockey. Canadians, we love hockey. I will watch the playoffs, but I'm really not a sports guy. I love music. If you were to create the ultimate rock band, we're talking singer, guitarist, bassist, drummer, any other musical instrument you want to add there, uh, from people that are dead or alive, and they can't be from your own bands. Who would you choose to be this fantasy rock band?
um, okay, I'm just gonna go full teenage and just yeah.
Yes.
Honestly, the most affecting singer for me, I think, is David Bowie. Um, it just hits so powerfully in the heart.
My
There,
wife just gasped in the background, so you made a good choice.
there are probably better. There are maybe better singers. It'd be like Aretha Franklin or I don't know, heaps of Otis Redding.
I was gonna say, I think you're into Otis. I read somewhere,
Ooh.
but I like David Bowie. Let's go with
Okay,
David Bowie.
I'll stick with Bowie. I'll stick with Bowie.
Your first instinct is always good.
Okay, cool. Guitar. Let's go. Uh, Manuel Gottschting from Ashra. I didn't pick the left-handed guitarist. Oh well, Manuel's in there now. Him and Bowie can sort of get their Germanic thing on. Oh, okay. Jesus. I think Prince should be on something. Um, let's put him on. Let's put him on bass. Sure. Um, he can play whatever. Do some BVs. Take over from Bowie. You know. I guess like John Bonham on drums because he's the best. Keyboardist. Anyone? I don't know. Someone good. Prince as well.
Yeah, let's give him a keyboard and a bass, and he'll can go waddle between the two.
Yeah. I don't know. Let's have who's good? Who's good at piano? Nina Simone. Let's go Nina Simone.
Well, it's interesting because it tells me a little bit about your influences without asking that question, and to see that there's a mixture of modern. Well, I mean, David Bowie it was modern, even if it's old, but also Bonham is like that classic rock. So you have that foundation of rock, but with a more artistic layer to it with the Bowies and even the jazz parts with the Simone or Otis Redding for that matter. So it kind of shows me a lot about who Pond is, and the music that you create has that energy of jazz, almost experimentation of jazz, but it has a lot of different elements. I think what makes it an interesting listen is all those elements together create something of beauty, like we talked about at the outset.
Oh, thank you. Very kind.
Well, again, just for those that want to see Nick perform live with his crew, Le Studio TD, December 3rd, 2022. Be there, don't miss it. It's going to be a great show. And again, we want to thank you for your time, Nick. I really appreciate the time you spent with us, and have a great show.
Pleasure. Thanks for that. It was a good interview.